Let's go back in time to the year 1940 and German plans to invade France. This here is the Eben-Emael fort, a Belgian stronghold at the Albert Canal. The stronghold was meant to stop German troops on their way west by destroying nearby bridges, if necessary. This complex was considered one of the best of its time, alongside the Maginot Line and the Siegfried Line. Was it possible to capture the stronghold without a long siege? Well, it was a very difficult task, almost impossible. At least the builders thought so, and it was, assuming that enemy will strike from a certain bearings and the strike will be done by the ground forces. The Germans proven that assumption wrong. On 10th May 1940 at 4:30 am, 42 U-523M aircrafts took off. Each one was towing a DFS gliders with 5 paratroopers in it. 10 of those gliders, 50 paratroopers, were meant to capture the fort itself, and the rest of the forces was dedicated to capture nearby bridges. It was the Assault Battalion Koch unit. They forced nearly 700 of the defenders to surrender and captured 2 of the 3 nearby bridges, opening the way west for the German 6th Army. Why was that possible? From the ground side, the fort was well protected. We have on the map, we can see the canal on the right side. On the left side there is a river. Around the fort there's a lot of barbed wire, trenches. But the fort had only one anti-aircraft station equipped with only 4 machine guns. So a weak spot. Reason number 1. No one suspected that the Germans will appear already inside the fort, landing right on top of the defenders using those gliders. White dots on the map mark the landing spots. So here we have an element of surprise, reason number 2. The paratroopers immediately attacked all entrances to the fort and blew up all gun turrets and cannons. To do that, they used a new kind of explosive, more precise and powerful. Reason number 3. And going back to the current day, I think we can find similarities with this story when we look at application security or IT security world. In my opinion, when we build our strongholds, we rely on tools and products too much. Big, shiny, ready to stop each attack. And yet there's always something which is missed, and the bad guys still end up in the middle of our fort like those paratroopers. We tend to forget about the people, which I believe are most important asset in the application security: the knowledge, skills, curiosity, vigilance, and motivation. Hi, my name is Mateusz Olejarka. I'm a senior security specialist at Securing. Most of the time I do web application penetration testing. More and more I work with software development teams, helping them with application security issues in software development. I'm co-author of the Security Aware Developer Workshop, which is my reason behind this talk. I will share with you lessons I learned about the APPSEC when either I or my colleagues were giving this workshop. The concept behind the workshop is purely defensive. We do not teach developers how to do penetration testing of web applications, but we show them vulnerabilities, their cause, their possible outcome, and then we let developers invent possible fixes and security improvements. We focus on security awareness and the fixing mindset. And back then, 3 years ago, when I was creating the content, I had my own view of how application security should look like inside an organization. As a former developer, I had the knowledge of how a typical software development looks like. And with that, I went to run my first edition of this workshop, and my concept evolved quite unexpectedly during those 3 years. Based on the discussion as we had with developers during the workshops, I wanted to share with you lessons I learned about the application security from developers. So let's jump to lessons. This picture shows one of the most devastating attacks on US troops in history, the Pearl Harbor. Getting to back communication. First, there were intelligence reports indicating the possibility of an attack which did not get the priority high enough. Second, there were orders issued informing about the possibility of a Japanese invasion, and the orders did not mention Pearl Harbor specifically, so neither troops' disposition nor their readiness level was changed. And finally, the incoming Japanese aircrafts were mistakenly treated as friendly bombers, which were to appear in that same time frame. During my workshop, I heard a lot of complaints about the security people. Let me quote a few. They do not understand how we work. They do not reply on our emails. You have to wait a long time before they eventually help you. They say, make it secure, but not how exactly. If you, as a security people, want to work effectively with developers, this has to end. Communication is one of the soft skills you just have to master. It's the most important skill in IT of the future. Drop your cubicle for a while, get out of your anonymous mailbox security at something, go meet developers in person, play whatever games they are playing in the office right now, drink coffee, tea, whatever, or now do that remotely. Then, and only then, you can hear stories about what they are struggling with in case of application security. And those stories might scare the shit out of you, or might not, but there's only one way to find out. It's go and talk. This picture presents Polish anti-tank rifle Pattern 35. It was a successful weapon capable to penetrate armor of any German tank used during the invasion of Poland from the distance less than 100 meters. Its deployment to troops was under strict secrecy. The rifles were delivered in wooden boxes disguised as measurement gear. On 15 July 1939, the order was issued to train selected soldiers and officers with the weapon. Unfortunately, the number of available rifles was around 3,500, so sadly it was not enough. It was such a good weapon that the Germans included it in their arsenal, and those very rifles were used during the assault on the Eben Emal fort. Why I mentioned the rifle? Because of the secrecy, because of the order which came out late to open the boxes, and finally because of the small amount available. In a few companies I visited, the security department was seen by the developers as like secret big brother which is always watching. To quote, the security guys are definitely watching our apps. Hell no, it's a myth. I tried vividly to destroy it. This happens when you build your trenches of another department, compartment, whatever, and those anonymous mailboxes mentioned before. IT security department is not almighty though. It's probably understaffed, and enemy forces have the advantage. It's hard to protect everything on ever-changing battlefield. That's why you should help and guide developers, because they are the main force behind the secure applications. Key issue here is the developer's attitude, which is usually I don't care or I don't have time for security. Although I met developers which understood the need to work on security side of their applications, they were badly outnumbered. I think also it heavily depends from the company. There is, from my experience, there is a big difference between people building a crypto exchange and people doing some internal applications. During the World War II, American Air Force faced an interesting life and death problem. Not all bombers, not all fighters return to base after a combat flight. On the picture you can see the results of a study where the planes which returned were mostly hit. The solution to the problem seems to be easy and straightforward. Put more armor on wings and hull, and there you go. Statistician Abraham Ward pointed out that planning improvements in armor based on the planes which return from combat flights is badly flawed, because the most sensitive parts might be the ones that were not discovered in the study because the planes which took damage there simply did not return to base. This is the survival bias, when you take your data without considering if there are unknown reasons which make your data set non-representative. So do not focus on what was found, think also what could have been missed. And the same issue goes with penetration testing. Not all vulnerabilities will be found. Pen test is an important activity, but it should never be the only one. In all kinds of testing, not all bugs are discovered. Also, we usually do not pen test everything. Almost always there is something in the application which is not working, so it gets excluded from the scope. Let me ask you this. If you run a penetration testing once a year, and on the other hand, you deploy to production new features and changes daily, how secure is it really? And of course, fixing bugs just before the production release can be costly too. So try to push left. Start the security activities even before you write the first line of code. Include security in the design phase using threat modeling, for example. Include security in code review, in testing. Try out various automated tools to help you. Maybe even run an internal bug bounty. If not the offensive trainings I've attended as a developer, probably I wouldn't be here with you today. The trainings sparked my interest in application security, and I quit my job as a developer. My case is an exception though. Getting back to World War II, what would you teach a paratrooper? Well, to parachute, of course, to fight effectively being surrounded by enemy forces, to shoot as well. It's Combat 101, not only for a paratrooper. But you do not teach a paratrooper how to drive a tank. You teach a paratrooper how to destroy a tank. And the same idea should be applied to developers training. In my opinion, there are four most important aspects of a good security training for developers. First, it should be developer-oriented, meaning it should take into account how developer works, which is mostly writing code in Visual Studio on any other IDE. It should not focus on learning developers how to use HTTP proxy, but it should be focused on finding and fixing bugs from the source code level. Second, developers should be engaged, should be actively taking part in the discussions, should actively exchange their experience with the group and the trainer. Third, training should contain tons of examples of security failures of other companies. Lots of examples of vulnerabilities, their causes, their consequences, to make developer aware how things might go wrong. In cross-site scripting, it's not about alert message, but actually it's about that the attacker can make actions on users, on victims' behalf. And four, flexible. Sometimes you cannot take out the whole team for like 2-day long workshop. So find a workshop which lasts 1 day, find one which lasts 2 hours for 4 consecutive days without disturbing your team's day-to-day activities. Have you ever considered such a training when each developer can stop it whenever she or he wants it? And finally, now everything has to be online. What if, for developers, learning security would be like watching Netflix? I will get back to you after a short commercial break.
Yeah, I'm sure you have a lot going on. Even during home office, you have hundreds of JIRA tickets to work on. And all those questions such as, how long is it going to take to complete this task? I mean, as much time as we need to complete this task. Am I right? Bug, ticket, fix, release. Bug, ticket, fix, release. And it goes on and on. In this rush, you don't even have time to think. Sometimes you just have to stand aside and look at the problem from a different angle. Maybe even a security angle. Let me show you why. so you want me to teach you?
Okay, so now we know how the training should look like. We should see which training suits whom. I believe offensive training makes sense for developers only if those developers later on can use those skills in the organization. I run both offensive and defensive trainings. For example, offensive for security champions, and they really did use that skills during their day-to-day job, and that's good. I wouldn't recommend training the whole developer team in this way though. The team I would send to a defensive training. I'd also recommend buying an access to the online security, online secure coding platform. Of course, let's not forget about the new hires. The sooner their journey with application security will start, the better. Here on the picture, done probably from an airplane, we can see several tanks located near the Rhine River during the World War II. It's very hard to see it from this picture itself, but all tanks look like the one on the right side. Inflatable, dummy tanks designed to confuse the enemy with the location and the size of the forces. You cannot see it from a reconnaissance plane, you have to get closer. And close can also be too late. This position of the forces is bad, you're not where you're supposed to be. I remember one particular workshop when there was a manager present, and he said that we do things this way according to this internal policy. Then suddenly from another side of the table, a senior developer spoke, and he said something like, hell no, we don't do things like this. There's no time. Of course, multiple times also I heard our app is secure, we do audits, we have the best programmers on the market, we're complying with this and that, we have security requirements written down and followed by our fabulous developers. Yeah. For those of you working with software as a service platforms, imagine a situation where when some potential customer, big fish customer like Spotify, knocks to your door and says, we'll buy your services, but first, please kindly fill out this 500-row length spreadsheet with open questions about your security program. Better be sure the answers are good. We'll check. I've seen this personally, and it's hard. Developers do not like feeling sales. Hell, I don't like to do that either. But sometimes the security departments, in their infinite wisdom, give developers sales to fill. This has to stop. I mean, compliance doesn't make your app secure, at least not the one on paper and the one at all cost. If you want to make those requirements implemented, you have to work together with developers with implementation and the verification of those requirements. Next thing, the list of requirements must be written down in a language that developer understand. So they should be engaged in creating such a list as well. To give you an example, please go and compare two documents. One is OWASP Top 10 Proactive Controls, and the second one is OWASP Top 10 List, to see the difference in language. Okay, to summarize, what you as a security people can do to change the developer's view of the application security. Most important action is to work on their attitude. You're in this together. What to do? First, improve communication. Make direct connections with them. Meet them. Then, understand how they work. Train them properly. Make them aware of vulnerability causes and consequences. Engage them in all application security related activities. Secure software development lifecycle is an organizational change. So support from the top management, clear areas of responsibility, mutual understanding are critical. And let me emphasize it again. People are the most important part here. To paraphrase Winston Churchill, in the name of our APPSEC cause, we shall fight in the design phase. We shall fight through implementation. We shall fight during testing. We shall fight till the final release, and we must fight together with developers to win the APPSEC battle. We shall never surrender. Thank you for listening. Catch me up for the QA or visit our stand.